There is an epidemic in our nation. It thrives in darkness and is fed by a culture of secrecy and deceit. You hear about it in the media, but by then it's too late. You hear about the Sandusky case and wonder how many other stories are out there waiting to be told. 1 in 4 girls and as many as 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused by the time they are 18. Almost always by someone they know and trust. And most will suffer in devastating silence for years. Why? Because they're afraid and feel alone. Who will believe them? The police didn't believe me. It took 11 years for my perpetrator to be caught, but not before he attacked again and again. It is time to shine a bright light on rape and sexual assault. The welfare of our children is at stake. It is time to take action. The video you are about to see, Duty Trumps Doubt, is used in over 2,000 police departments across the country, and we feel compelled to release it to the public now. Please watch and share this video with your family and friends. It is time to end the silence, and it starts with you.
I will faithfully discharge my duties
to the best of my ability. So help me God.
We have to remember each case is different and each sexual assault incident is different. And we're police officers every day. The person calling us, this might be the only time they've ever talked to a police officer. So if they might not be acting right or how we expect them to act. And we have to remember that okay, so a victim didn't cry enough. Well, then maybe they didn't cry enough because they're in shock. There's no victim handbook. There's no, listen, if you're a victim of this, act this way and react this way and cry this way. There's no victim's handbook.
I am 3 years old. My father orally rapes me and in the process breaks my shoulder, trying to keep me from resisting. Father gets an examination done by a psychiatrist who reports him cured. And I was left alone with him many times, and the oral rapes continued.
Just as with many families, incest is an issue that is veiled by silence very often, but I think that people of color have the additional issue of coming up against law enforcement, not really feeling like their story is going to be believed, and snitching on a family member when you know that the thought is that the police is the enemy.
There are many reasons why victims are reluctant to come forward. First and foremost is the embarrassment of the situation. They don't want their family members to find out, their loved ones to experience the stress that they've experienced. Fear of the unknown, fear of having to go to the hospital and have those intrusive examinations that are part of sexual assault investigations.
They have this fear of being a witness in court. They don't want to be confronted with their assailant and point him out in a courtroom, or they're afraid of retaliation.
Fear of dealing with the police. Fear that the police may not believe me.
And on the other side of the scale, there are victims who are so outraged, and it was such a traumatic experience to them that they will cooperate to the nth degree and do whatever they have to do to make sure that the perpetrator is arrested, prosecuted, and sentenced to as long as he possibly can be sentenced.
My story starts when I was learning how to tell time, tie my shoes, and literally reading The Cat in the Hat. I was assaulted by a cousin who lived in our home. He had been slowly touching me, caressing, holding on to me, keeping me close to him. My sexual assault, once it got going, was pretty regular until I was pretty much senior year of high school, regularly being a few times a week. He took a sense of self, the joy of sexuality, personal freedom, the ability to see myself clearly.
I'm reminded of what an old captain from Bridgeport Police, who's now deceased, told me when I first took the job as a cop on the street, that that I will encounter people at the most tragic and or most traumatic point of their life. And we should consider that a privilege, to be allowed into someone's life at the most catastrophic moment oftentimes.
He
put chains on the handcuffs on my feet and my hands that I was in I forget what they call it, but hog tie position. And I had a ball gag in my mouth, and I was being like raised up to a point where I completely almost passed out. And when I gave up breathing, or when I gave up, that I thought that I was completely, like, that was it. And in my head, the last person I saw in my head was my brother for some reason, because he was supposed to meet me out that night, and I knew that if something would have happened to me, I knew that he wouldn't be able to live with that.
You get one clear shot at a crime scene, and that is why that training is so imperative, because if you don't collect the proper evidence from the moment you arrive and preserve the evidence, that evidence can disappear in a blink of an eye.
But it's the team approach, because if you do it and you do it right, you're going to have a great deal of backup behind you. And so you're going to rely on not just on the first responder, but the second responder and the third responders and the team. And you're going to take the investigative steps, you're going to take the forensics, you're going to take the forensic nursing aspect of it to get to the bottom of an investigation.
And when I was attacked, when I was actually put in a trunk of my car, I knew I was going to be raped and it probably could be killed. And I could not let my parents come to the state and identify my dead body. So really, I wanted to survive for them.
Helping that officer to use sensitive, intuitive questioning, not interrogating, because that person's already been through a life-threatening event. What would be helpful to you right now? How can I help you right now?
This girl was just calm. She maintained her composure. She was sort of matter-of-fact about what happened. And some people reading what happened would think, I don't know if I really believe this. Well, when I brought the perpetrator in, he gave a confession. And it was exactly what the girl said happened. I keep that in mind all the time because it makes me think, what if someone else talked to her and they didn't believe her? You know, so you have to keep that open mind that, you know, this girl would have gone through a life feeling like no one ever believed me. I finally was able to step up and say something, but no one believed me.
I think it's so important for law enforcement to treat each victim with dignity and respect. Know that they are going through probably the worst event that's occurred in their lives. They need to urge the victim to go to the hospital so that evidence can be collected. In my case, certainly, they collected DNA evidence from my body, and that's what proved everything. That's what proved the case all those years later, and we got a dangerous perpetrator off the streets.
We have to discard those preconceived notions of what we think we're looking at. First responders are the key to it all because they're making decisions that affect other responders.
It's then that it's most imperative that duty trumps doubt. You always must believe that the victim, even though the victim at that particular time is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or maybe so emotionally and severely traumatized that you're not getting a lot of information, it's still your obligation to make sure that you preserve that scene and believe that victim's account until you know otherwise, until you absolutely know otherwise.
Do you think he had a gun?
Yes, I heard metal clanging and he had put it in my throat and then he put it in my head and then he put it in my
That assailant may have a gun. She can't give a description of him because of the fact that his face is covered.
Oh, dear God.